What loyalty looks like in a golden empire. In a world where wealth gleams brighter than honesty, loyalty becomes the rarest currency of all. Yet within one of the region's most powerful dynasties, loyalty was not merely a virtue. It was the invisible force holding an empire together. And for one Sheikh, understanding the true meaning of loyalty will reveal both the strength of his world and the fractures hiding beneath its surface. To understand why this story matters today, we must look beyond the polished image of royal families and their luxurious lives. Empires built on fortune may appear unshakable, but their true stability depends on something far more fragile: trust. Not the trust written into contracts or proclaimed in speeches, but the trust formed in silence, tested in crisis, and proven only when the stakes are highest. He learned this truth as a boy, watching the relationship between his father and a man who was neither royal nor elite. A quiet advisor, older, calm, always standing at the edge of the room. He never spoke loudly, never sought attention. Yet everyone deferred to him, and no one questioned why. Loyalty, the boy discovered, was often found in those who did not need to prove it. As he grew older, he began to notice how rare such loyalty truly was. In palace halls where ambition lingered like perfume, alliances formed quickly and dissolved even faster. Flattery hid agendas, smiles masked rivalries, and loyalty, when displayed too eagerly, often signaled something dangerous. The first real test came when he assumed partial responsibility for managing the dynasty's international partnerships. What seemed like a routine assignment soon revealed a complex web of interests, expectations, and hidden loyalties. Each foreign partner presented polished intentions, yet behind their courtesy he sensed strategic motives. And within his own delegation, he began to detect subtle shifts. People whispered outside contacts, decisions influenced by quiet promises, alliances forming in ways that did not feel aligned with the empire's goals. Confusion grew into suspicion. Suspicion sharpened into resolve. Something was happening beneath the surface, and he knew that to protect his family's legacy, he would have to uncover which loyalties were genuine and which were only pretending to be. He began by watching, not acting. In rooms filled with polished conversations and diplomatic charm, he paid attention to the pauses, the hesitations, the small inconsistencies that revealed more than any declaration of loyalty ever could. He noticed how one advisor always deferred to foreign partners too quickly, how another avoided discussing certain contracts, how a third grew tense whenever long-term agreements were mentioned. None of it proved betrayal, but all of it hinted at loyalties drifting in dangerous directions. To understand the truth, he broadened his circle discreetly. He met with analysts who had no stake in palace politics, examined financial patterns that others ignored, and reviewed communication logs with patient precision. Piece by piece, a subtle picture began to form. Certain deals had been shaped not by the empire's priorities, but by private interests hidden behind layers of legitimacy. Favoritism disguised itself as strategy. Personal gain disguised itself as diplomacy. And those positioned closest to him were the ones guiding decisions off their intended course. The realization unsettled him deeply. Loyalty, he had always believed, was a bond stronger than wealth. But now he faced a truth more complex. Loyalty could be borrowed, influenced, even purchased, yet rarely sustained by anything other than genuine conviction. The turning point came during a high-stakes negotiation with an influential foreign consortium. The delegation entered the room confident, rehearsed, prepared to secure an agreement that would strengthen the empire for decades. But the Sheikh sensed something was wrong the moment the discussions began. His advisors pushed aggressively for concessions that made no strategic sense. Concessions that benefited the consortium more than their own nation. Their urgency felt unnatural, as if the outcome had been predetermined long before the meeting started. He paused in negotiation and asked a single, unexpected question. A question that forced everyone at the table to reveal their intentions, not through words, but through their reactions. The silence that followed confirmed his suspicion. The consortium had secured unofficial influence over members of his delegation, shaping the empire's decisions from shadows. Anger might have been justified, but it wasn't helpful. Instead, the Sheikh chose clarity. He excused his advisors from a meeting, continued the discussion alone, and reshaped the terms with calm authority. What emerged was not the deal others had prepared. It was the deal the empire actually needed. When the advisors returned, their unease was impossible to hide. And for the first time, he understood how deeply fractured loyalty could become when mixed with personal ambition and outside influence. The discovery placed a new weight on his shoulders. If loyalties could shift this easily, the empire was far more vulnerable than anyone dared to admit. And uncovering the truth behind these shifting allegiances would require confronting not just advisors, but the very culture that allowed loyalty to be treated as a commodity. The conflict he now faced was no longer about diplomacy. It was about protecting the heart of an empire that could crumble from within long before it faced any threat from beyond. The deeper he investigated, the clearer the fractures became. Loyalty, he realized, did not vanish in dramatic acts of betrayal. It eroded quietly, worn down by incentives, ego, and the subtle pressure of outside influence. Those he once trusted had not turned against the empire. They had simply begun serving two masters without acknowledging it, and divided loyalty, he knew, was more dangerous than open opposition. He summoned a small, confidential team. Individuals chosen not for their power, but for their integrity. Together, they traced the pathways of influence shaping recent decisions. What they uncovered was alarming. Foreign entities had strategically identified vulnerable advisors, offering them access, flattery, and opportunities disguised as partnerships. None of it was illegal, but all of it was corrosive. It allowed outsiders to shape outcomes while maintaining a facade of respect. With each revelation, the conflict grew more personal. He had trusted these advisors, confided in them, believed they were aligned with the empire's long-term goals. Now he saw how easily loyalty could distort when ambition mingled with subtle manipulation. It wasn't betrayal born from malice. It was betrayal born from weakness. The pressure intensified as rumors began circulating within palace walls. Some claimed he was becoming paranoid. Others whispered that he was reorganizing power for his own benefit. The quiet corridors of influence turned heavier, crowded with suspicion and half-truths. And still, he continued digging, driven not by anger, but by a responsibility to protect something larger than himself. The turning point came during a private audience with his father. The elder Sheikh listened in silence as his son described the shifting loyalties and hidden influences. When he finished, his father spoke only one sentence. Soft, steady, unforgettable. Loyalty is a mirror. It shows you not who they are, but who you must become. Those words struck him with unexpected force. He realized that loyalty could not be demanded. It had to be inspired. It could not be purchased. It had to be earned. And leadership, if grounded in fear or control, would only push people deeper into secret alliances. He shifted his strategy. Instead of exposing disloyalty immediately, he began observing how individuals acted when granted responsibility. He gave them tasks that required transparency, choices that revealed intention, and room to show whether their loyalty was genuine or conditional. Some rose to the challenge, proving their commitment with humility and clarity. Others faltered, hesitating, concealing, avoiding accountability. But the most troubling discovery came from someone he never suspected. A senior advisor, respected by all, admired for his steady demeanor, had quietly aligned himself with foreign interests for years. Not for money, but for influence, believing he could shape global outcomes more effectively by serving two powers at once. His intentions, twisted as they were, had placed the empire at risk more than anyone realized. The Sheikh knew confronting him would shake the dynasty. It would reveal vulnerabilities few were prepared to acknowledge. But silence was no longer an option. Loyalty, once cracked, could not be left untreated. The moment to face the truth had arrived, and he understood that what happened next would redefine the future of the Golden Empire he had sworn to protect. He summoned the senior advisor to a private chamber, a place where the Empire's most difficult conversations had unfolded over generations. The advisor entered with the same measured calm he had always shown, unaware that the delicate balance he'd maintained for years was now unraveling. The Sheikh did not begin with accusations. Instead, he asked a simple question, one that pierced straight to the layers of practiced composure. Who do you serve when loyalties collide? The advisor hesitated, just long enough for the truth to surface without words. What followed was not anger, but revelation. The man admitted he had cultivated relationships with foreign powers, believing he could use his position to build influence that extended beyond the empire. He insisted he meant no harm, that his intentions were strategic, even protective. But intentions, the Sheikh knew, were irrelevant when trust had been compromised. The confrontation rose to its climax when the Sheikh explained the impact of the advisor's choices. Partnerships had been distorted. Decisions had been influenced. The empire's autonomy had been tested without anyone fully understanding why. Loyalty, once fractured, had rippled outward into areas too important to risk. The advisor, realizing the magnitude of his actions, lowered his gaze, the weight of his misjudgment settling into silence. The Sheikh dismissed him from his post, not with cruelty, but with the solemnity of a leader safeguarding what generations before him had built. It was a decision that shook the palace, but it was also the moment the empire began to heal. Removing a single figure did not restore unity overnight, but it sent a message stronger than any decree. Loyalty was not a formality. It was the essence of their stability. In the weeks that followed, he restructured the advisory council. Transparency increased. Responsibilities were redistributed. Trust, once strained, slowly rebuilt itself through clear expectations and renewed accountability. Advisors who had wavered found themselves returning to principled alignment. Those who had always been loyal now stood closer than ever before. He reflected on the journey one evening as he stood on a balcony overlooking the shimmering city beyond the palace walls. The empire glowed with the light of prosperity, but he understood that its true strength lay not in its wealth, but in the bonds that protected it. Loyalty, he realized, was not measured in promises or proximity. It was measured in the courage to stay aligned when influence pulled in every direction. His father's words echoed back to him. Loyalty is a mirror, and through this trial, he had seen clearly who he needed to become, a leader who inspired devotion not by power, but by integrity. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again?